The Green Room at Lift Vancouver is brought to you by Cloud9 Cannabis Coaching. If you have suffered from anxiety, chronic pain, or depression, like I have, you know full well how debilitating it can be. Brady Sparrow, founder of Cloud9 Coaching, specializes in microdosing cannabis to help her clients lead more balanced lives. Whether you've been using cannabis your entire adult life or just now learning about this incredible plant, Brady's simple microdosing guide will help you find the perfect balance in just 1 month. Brady is about to host her first 30-day challenge called Find Your Cloud9 in 30 Dope Days. I'm doing it and you should too. So why not go over to cloud9coaching.com and join us. Be sure to use coupon code JACQUI, JACQUI, for a special Green Room discount.
Good morning and welcome to Lift&Co's 2.0 Canadian Cannabis Business Conference and Expo. It's Lester from Cannabis.Wiki. I'm here with Gerald Major.
Yeah.
Jackie Childs.
Morning.
And Timothy, our special guest.
Thank you, Lester.
From Genomics. What's going on, sir?
Well, it's just a pleasure to be here. I've been having a great few days at the Lift&Co conference. There's not a lot of representation here from genomics companies like Lighthouse. So it's been great to sort of spread the gospel of all the benefits of this science, which we're bringing to the cannabis community and making genomic sciences accessible to the small guy and then the mid-range companies that don't have their own internal departments. You know, okay. Up until recently, cannabis genomics have been really only accessible to the Auroras and the Canopies, who have their own internal research and development departments. Mm-hmm. But we really enjoy working with farmers, hemp farmers, craft people, micro people, because there's just so much to be discovered, so much to be learned, and ways that we can use this plant by sort of looking inside it and letting the plant tell its own story. So genomics can be applied to reading the DNA, to making discoveries, to identifying varieties, and so on one hand, there's the R&D. You can improve your margins. You can tweak your breeding to optimize your crops. Yeah, and your yields, and maybe
Just a better flower, better plant.
Whatever trait you're looking for, essentially. Right. Maybe it's to make a plant that suits your medical condition optimally. Maybe it's a plant that we work with you to discover the genetic basis for autoflowers, so you can get more harvest out every year. You know, there's all sorts of ways. But then there's also genetic identity verification, and that's very important these days because cannabis isn't a medicine, it's a multitude of medicines, right? There's not only the cannabinoids we've discovered and we know well, but there's hundreds of other constituents with medical value in every variety. Yeah, and so each genome, like each seedling or a group of clones, has its own chemical signature. And when somebody finds medicine that works well for them, they want to get the same medicine every time, right?
Consistent dosing, consistent
Yes,
effect.
Exactly. So we do the tests and apply a genetic identity to each genome, and we call it a genovar. And we would like to see
Call it a what?
Well, a genovar, genomic variety.
Okay.
You know, as opposed to a cultivar or a strain. Strain's a very ambiguous name. I don't know how you guys feel about the word strain. I love the colorful strain names.
Why is it strain to some and strand to others?
That's a really good question.
Potato, potato?
Yeah, potato, I think. But anyways, each individual genome, it's so important to know it, document it, and we're working with retailers and producers and try to advocate for policy that respects the consumer more so that people can have that consistent supply. And we're hoping that there will come a day when you can scan the QR code and up will come our Genovar report, giving all sorts of information.
Cool.
Yeah.
Really?
So how's the acceptance for this?
People get really excited about it. People absolutely get excited about it, and some of the big retailers, you know, it's ironic because my own history is in the craft community. I was a breeder for many years, and I live on Salt Spring Island, a community rich with growers, and you just smell the cannabis in the air.
I can validate that. I can validate that.
So, and yet some of the people we're working with now are the biggest players coming out of pharma. For example, Shoppers Drug Mart will be using. There's a program at play where our genotyping array will be factored into a system to provide patients with consistent supply of medicine. And what we would like to see is that to permeate the industry so that, you know, maybe you're shopping at the dispensary down the road and they also have these sort of systems in place.
Yeah. So then you're saying that, we had Ken on the show yesterday from Shoppers Drug Mart, and so he was talking about like the other side of things. You have the side where you're talking about the plant and the genetics and getting that stuff right. We saw the soil guy, Remo, you know. and
Yes.
we're starting to build things at the foundation, you're saying that you can start to get the compounds or the things or the whatever you want to do, you have the ability to try to bring that out in those plants.
Absolutely.
And then Ken says, and my view is the patient view, right? So
Yes.
Ken says that we can start to figure out how the patient is going to actually accept this stuff. And there's so
Yes.
you're saying at some point in time you could build the exact optimal thing to cure the exact patient
Like whatever
complaints.
your ailment is,
Yeah.
you are going to be able to identify.
Are we
the
5 years
best-
away from
Well,
that? Or?
there will come a day when this vast territory of I call it the genomic frontier, because there's so much
genome?
information in the cannabis genome. It's 800 million base pairs, and all of those the genes in there have their different alleles, different forms, and they work together in different ways. And produce effects on different patients. But the human genome is also very complex.
Right.
So
Right.
if people,
We're all so different.
Yeah. So if everybody was standardized, then we could say yes, and we could make these discoveries, do these the statistical analyses of the genetic basis for the trait of how it affects people. But people are so complex too, so we kind of have to come at it from both directions. And eventually there will come a day when we can predictably say that, hey, these genetic markers are highly associated with these effects, but only for people with their human markers that
Right,
correlate, right? So
okay.
Science has a long way to go, but we're moving in that direction.
So this
Science
system,
is so sexy.
We're getting there. We're getting there. So I could say, I mean, my crew, I have like, different times I have different needs. So I
Yes.
could have different things in my repertoire, like my Medipack that I have currently from my pharmacy of my pharmaceutical meds. And then at different times when you need different things, you can use. This is awesome. So you said science and research.
Science and
So
research.
those are big buzzwords. So
Consistent dosing.
yes, they're big buzzwords. So just
okay,
go
my
into
question is though,
research.
you're going to need a lot of input from the patient.
Yes. Now, right now we're working primarily with growers on other sorts of traits, not necessarily the medical benefits, but we're working with growers who are trying to optimize their yields in some way. So, for example, we've got a project going on. I think I mentioned autoflower before. That's one that we're working on heavily, and that will that's an opportunity for us to then develop a targeted assay, and we can allow the group we're working with to really advance their breeding and their abilities to optimize their business. And that's a perfect example of how a smaller company is leveraging the sort of science that typically only the huge guys would be able
So
to.
right now it's you're strategicing for flower.
Well,
and then
in
get
this
into
case,
medicinal.
yeah, in this case. Now, there are many ways to apply the sort of the genomic data, and there's always new partnerships emerging for us as a business. But in terms of how what we're doing is important for the medical patient, it's these certified genetic identities for every variety, right? And for growers, when they find their unicorn, when they plant their 1,000 seeds, and they find that one glowing example of
Right.
just that perfect plant, right?
We saw some of those at Remo's.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, he's
Wow.
a great breeder, right? He's a great breeder. So it would be very useful for him to create sort of it's almost like a passport, a genetic identity for that plant. So then he can go
okay.
and he doesn't need to be so afraid about licensing it out, selling it within the industry. There's ways to confirm the identity anytime, right? He can go back and test it downstream and find out where that clone ended up, right?
Right.
And
So like a fingerprint. It's like
a fingerprint, yeah.
Okay.
So we're through this documentation, it really enables people to conduct the trade in genetic assets, and that's another sort of business model that people can apply.
So this is big.
It's huge.
It's three-year goal, 3-year plan. Where are your hopes for this?
Well, we would like to see more awareness of the benefits of genomic sciences, and we'd like to see more of the little guys leveraging it, more of the former legacy and craft community,
Right.
Just breeding better cannabis, and we'd like to see consumers comfortable with that there's trust in the industry, because they can go to the retailers and they know exactly what they're getting every time, right? Because now if they go to one store, they go to another store and they buy, Tangy, crossed with Purple Kush, it might seem like, well, that's very specific. It's got to be the same thing, but
Well,
then
it's huge that you say trust. Right?
yeah, they don't know what they're getting at this point. And ironically, with all these regulations we've got this packaging, And on one hand, you got to use a hatchet to get them open, so there's problems there. But on the other hand, they actually carry misinformation. We see like sativa dominant, but then we test it, we find no, actually that's got some what you might call ruderalis or indica dominance. And
call it what? What's the in between word? Ruderalis.
Ruderalis. I mean, there's a lot of debate in the scientific community about what the ancestral populations of cannabis even are, but it's not this simplistic division of indica and sativa.
Aren't they all hybrids now?
They're all
It's just
hybrid.
on to what level are they on this side or that side?
Yeah, exactly. But quite often the packaging is just it's folklore that people say this is indica dominant, but in reality that's just a story that's been passed down and now it's made its way onto these labels, right?
Oh, it hasn't been tested.
I mean,
That's crazy.
so
That's crazy.
the research angle though, so we talk about from a patient perspective, the research is not there, but certainly this is scientific and research. So what's your perspective on research and where it's going? Because you know of all the different strains and you
Sure.
can,
Sure. You know what? There's two schools of thought here, and we come down very much on one side, and there's a few other companies out there, like some of you may be familiar with the pronouncement made by a group called Phylos a year ago, where they're talking about homogenizing the genetic supply and optimizing it and making all these other strains obsolete. We come down completely from the other perspective. We want to enhance the diversity of the cannabis gene pool. We want to reach back to ancestral landrace populations, because if you think about all this breeding we've done for 30 years in North America, a lot of those came from very small populations of seeds that were brought back in bags or mailed from Africa.
I have a lot
or
of
elsewhere.
those.
Yeah, and so the genetic supply was bottlenecked at the beginning, and we've created great diversity, done amazing things. But there is uncharted genetic territory in all mainland China or Sri Lanka, all over the world, and we're working to document that diversity and then bring some of those great traits, because in these amazing strains we have in North America and in Europe, quite often there have been suppressed expressions of minor cannabinoids in favor of THC.
Okay.
Right.
So what I hope is that research reveals the great diversity and abundance that these ancestral land races have. We bring
so the
back that
genetics or the
diversity.
genomics in our cannabis 2-3 years from now could be looking vastly different.
Absolutely, and every few months it seems like there's a new earth-shaking discovery. Just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there were 2 more cannabinoids documented that are about 15 or 20 times more potent in terms of how powerfully they bind to our receptors.
Then CBD or THC?
Yeah, there's THC or CBD, and when I see things like that come out, it excites me.
When you
Wow.
get
For
more
sure.
precise,
Yeah,
it saves patients money.
Yes.
Because they don't have to try and fail.
Exactly. And there's a lot of trial and error in finding the medicine that works for you, and there's just so much unknown that it will always come down to trial and error to really find what resonates and what works best. But then to be able to have that consistent supply is so important, and that's a fundamental change that we would love to see in the industry. Just that trust and the availability of consistency to support choices.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
I like it.
Where can our viewers find you?
Oh, you can find me in the woods on Salt Spring Island, but we're also online.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, we're at Lighthouse Genomics on Instagram. We're at lighthousegenomics.com on the internet, and we're behind our desks and visiting farms. We're out in Stratford, Ontario, not too long ago at the beautiful Danica Dunseith hemp farm.
Shout
taking
out.
samples. It was so good.
We got a fan club. We got fan clubs over here.
That's right. Yeah, we love going out and doing farm visits. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had someone on an acreage in California collecting samples. So we're working with people internationally. DNA can be shipped across borders. There's a lot of exciting research being done, and it's just such an honor to be
DNA
part
can
of
be
it.
shipped across borders.
Can you believe it? Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for stopping
We
by.
do.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We do road trips. We do road trips.
Excellent. I look forward to hosting
Thanks
all of
for
you.
coming to the green room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, where Cannabis Talk is always fresh and a little bit sticky. Keep it locked to Cannabis Wiki, the green room.
Peace.
And we're out.
Yeah.